Now this is a BoF, so I'm hoping for a lot of contribution from the floor. There's a Gobby document which is linked up on the slides there, so please, if you've got Gobby 05 installed, connect to gobby.debian.org and you'll find the text document there. So keep updating things in there. There's only a few little pointers in there at the moment. Most of the content I'm hoping will come from everybody else. So we're looking at validation and continuous integration. What are we doing in Debian? What can we do? What do we need to add to the system so that we can do better validation? Or what are we trying to achieve? What are we hoping to actually get from our validation systems? So if we look at our starting point, we've got PyU parts. We've had that for quite some time now. So that's doing installation, removal, upgrade, reinstallation, testing, all that kind of stuff. That's a very useful tool. It concentrates on one package at a time. CI Debian.net concentrates on one package at a time, but runs the unit tests or runs a test suite for the installed package. There's some overlap there. Some of the packages have to run the upstream test suite, which is actually testing the code in the source, not necessarily the installed package. That's because the idea of testing just the installed package is it's unfamiliar to how a lot of the upstream unit tests are actually created. So the support isn't necessarily there to do it against a different path. Another big part of our validation is the archive-wide rebuilds. We can do more of that. We're getting faster and faster machines for multiple architectures, so we can do archive rebuilds on different architectures in the future. So each of those concentrate on one package at a time. Lava is the new part of that equation, and what we're hoping with Lava, it can already test kernels and bootloaders, and it can start to test the actual system. So you're starting to test multiple sets of packages against other sets of packages. You can do it across a whole range of different nodes as well. So the full details of Lava will be in the talk at the end of today, to actually get a full understanding of what Lava can do. But think of it as a test environment initially for kernels and bootloaders, but then escalating up through the system to do testing across multiple nodes and allowing you to actually control the data being exchanged between different machines, and it's cross-architecture. So there's a whole range of things you can actually do there. But once we've actually gone through some of those methods, we can talk more about what kind of targets we want. We still want individual packages to be validated, and we need the continuous integration loops back for the maintainers. Individual packages is where most of this stuff comes in, but we also need to make sure that we are able to test sets of packages, either dependencies, which is somewhat what PyU parts can do, and again CI Debian.net can do, but also packages that are related by something that's more of a user space thing, about people tending to use this tool will also tend to have this tool installed. There's no dependency relation, but do they work well together? Can we actually test that these things side by side? When you've got forks of the same source code, or the originally the same source code, can you install them side by side? Can you build things against one and against the other? Can you switch between them, and can you actually compare them? Those kinds of tasks. Oop. So the microphone's come up. Hey, there we go. That's nice and loud. Yeah, so Antoni's added a comment there about CI.Debian.net can actually help with collections of related packages. So installer and bootstraps. The installer testing is quite manual at the moment. Steve does a lot of testing with the CD images. Kibby does a lot of testing for his own DI installer builds. We actually have the DI builds there that people could test. Bootstrapping. We are regularly bootstrapping a new architecture. We're putting new tools in that can actually help and actually develop a way of bootstrapping. So we need to validate whether we can actually bootstrap these things. And it's not necessarily a case of, waiting until the next new architecture string turns up in dpackage. It's, can we pretend that there's a new architecture called foobar, and can we build for it? So can we simulate these things? Can we actually go through the logical flow of the tools that we've got and show that they do actually work? Can we identify the dependency loops in advance, independent of which architecture we're looking at the time? Kernels and bootloaders. Well, yeah, there's lots of different kernel builds that all need to be validated. They all need some kind of proof that they do actually boot. Now, a lot of that will happen quite easily on x86. What are we doing for the other architectures? Are we even testing a lot of the kernels that we've actually got up there? And bootloaders. We're probably only testing grub on x86 with the standard Linux kernel. What can we do to extend that? And then something that comes up again and again and again from the release team point of view is, yeah, that's all well and good, but you're starting with a freshly installed system. You've got no user data on it. You're not messing around with it and changing the configuration of stuff. How do we validate a system that's closer to what our users have actually got when they come to upgrade from one stable release to the next? Can we anonymize dirty systems in a suitable, can we get people to trust us to give us their systems anonymized and then run them through these kinds and keep it there as a rolling dirty system? Can we develop tools that will artificially create changes to configuration files for LDAP and other complex tools? Can we artificially break someone's Xim or postfix config and see whether the other tools survive? These kinds of aggressive testing, can we do that? And then all this validation is not much use if it doesn't come back to the developers. We need to integrate it. We need to allow the developers to get proper notification of what's going on. And how do we do that? How often do we test? That's generally going to come down to how much hardware can we throw at it, and how quickly can we push through the tests? How exhaustive do you want the tests to be? The more we get this problem in Lava a lot of the Android people put in tests that run for 24 hours, and then they put in 2 jobs in one day. And you go, that doesn't work. If you're submitting jobs regularly, you've got to at least balance the length of time it will take to run the test over the time between the submissions, or add more hardware. Now, it's relatively easy for other places to just throw money at the problem. It's a bit harder for Debian. We might not have that that ability to add yet more hardware. We may do. And how do we get the developers to be aware? It's not necessarily enough to have an RSS feed or a pointer in the PTS that says something in your package is broken. It's not necessarily enough just to tell the maintainer this package is broken. The maintainer is going to need, much like an upstream developer, they're going to need context. They're going to need to know, well, why is it broken? Where's the end of the test log that you did? What kind of breakage is it? Is it something I can fix easily with my next commit because I knew what went wrong? Or is it something that actually, oh, that's a real problem, that's have to go up to someone else? And once we start getting into the notifications part, how do we stop overloading maintainers with 4 emails a day saying you've got critical failures in this package and that package and this package and that package? So let's start thinking about where we are with the tools as they stand, or what do people want from these validation methods? Are there other tools we're not using yet, or are there other kinds of validation that we need to think about? Who's got some ideas on what's missing in Debian at the moment? You have a microphone? And please, someone make sure that these comments go into the Gobi document.
So for the moment, what we are doing is that we run this kind of tests after the packages are uploaded. And I believe that the good approach to do what really a CI is to validate the packages against these tests before it gets into the archive.
Yep.
So I think that would be the first thing that we should work on, to have this kind of infrastructure in the FTP master in DAC or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's the idea that unstable shouldn't be necessarily a free-for-all for absolutely everybody to break every package. That if there's an auto-package test in the package when it is uploaded, then why not have a short delay? There's a delay anyway, because I've just uploaded a new version of a package. It's not going to show up on the mirrors until tomorrow.
Not only auto packages, pew parts and everything.
The whole set.
Yeah.
That gets back into the...
Even if it's not rejecting packages, at least warn the developer at the time of the upload.
Yeah. You get into the time delay there, because PU parts in particular can take quite a long time to run. But yeah, we shouldn't necessarily be waiting for these systems, whichever one they are, to poll the archive and say, tell me what's happened since I last tested, but actually for the upload to poke the CI and say, something's happened, queue this.
Yeah, we could also try to... It's working with it? Yeah, okay. Yeah. The other thing that would be interesting would be to be able to trigger tests from, for example, you're using a code review tool. Like if you could plug your Gerrit on CI Debian.net and get, I don't know of any teams that does code review, but that's something that probably would be interesting to explore too.
Antonio, any comments on whether we can have something like Lava Tool, something like the XML RPCs for a maintainer to poke a test into CI?
Yes, so in CI.debian.net documentation, it is documented how to run the test locally. So you can even install DebCI from Unstable and use its helper scripts to create a test bed locally with just one command, and then you can run really easily. And you can easily integrate in your workflow, like running that. I mean, I do that. Every package that has a test, I run the test before uploading.
The limitation with that, Antonio, is that then if it's a third party like Raphael who's running the test and it's my package, well, the data about the failure is on his computer, not on ci.debian.net or on mine. So it would be nice to be able to, for someone to just poke ci.debian.net, if there's enough resources available, to say, put this into the queue for a normal test that is then visible to everybody.
Okay, so it's like making possible to users to provide, like, I run this test on my machine and the result was this?
Or just to add it to the queue, just like Lava Tool does with XML RPC. Can we do something that actually does the authentication to allow someone, whether GPG, signature, or whatever, that just says, this source package, put it into your into the queue to be run as soon as you can.
You mean an arbitrary source package from anywhere?
From the archive. It would need to be a package from the archive.
If it's in an archive, it will run it anyway, as soon as it can.
Yeah.
My point was that there's a lot of value of enabling all our test infrastructures to run against packages not in the archive, or versions of packages that are not in the archive. Another case where this would be useful is Mentor's Debian.net. Because if you have a new package, you see that it validates against all tests that we have, you are much more likely to dig into sponsoring it than if it doesn't.
Yeah. How long does the ci.debian.net run take for the entire archive now, Antonio? 3 days. 3 days. So we may well need to throw more hardware.
That's solvable with more CPU.
Yeah. That's,
it's in the plant anyway.
Yeah, that's a hardware issue. We can just throw hardware at that and get the time down.
So I have 2 comments to make. One is on this stuff. I don't know how close PPAs are, but if we get them, it would be really cool if... this is supposed to have an automated step where you can say, put these packages in unstable now, right? So it would be really cool if at this step or before this step, you can say, please run these tests on my PPA packages, and then only if these are okay, then do the copy into unstable. And my second comment is about what you were talking about, dirty environments. All of these tests, especially I'm thinking the CI auto package tests, these run in like basically a chroot, right? Which is not actually a very realistic environment. So even one step before dirty environments, we could run these things in clean desktop systems, maybe. So take a desktop ISO, boot it, and then run your tests inside there. And then at least you have things like login D and proper init system and all this stuff running. I think it's an idea that, okay, it's not full systems that have been used by a user for 6 months.
The difficulty with using a desktop like that is that a lot of the times tools that are useful for a desktop user are difficult to automate and script. So if you've got something which would cause a password prompt or require some kind of clicking access rather than actually command line, then it's harder to script that inside the desktop OS. So then you start writing wrappers, and then you're actually testing the wrappers, not the actual software. So there's difficult issues around that, because that's where you start to think more about system testing, and you're starting to think, well, okay, well now we need a graphics capture card, and we need to be able to compare screenshots from static screenshots against the next screenshot.
I want to say something quickly. So we have, in Ubuntu, we have a tool called Autopilot, which can do some of this kind of stuff, which is like, so it works for GTK and Qt currently. And you can say things like, open the application, click this button, and then check that the application is displaying this thing, and do this kind of stuff. But a lot of, so you quickly get into problems where you're having to mock parts of the system, because then you want to be able to compare the outputs, and you don't want it to depend on the real hardware and things like that. So this is where there are problems. But there are tools which can do some of this. I'm just saying it might be a step up from mature root, but it does introduce its own difficulties. It's true.
So who fancies implementing that for Debian?
Yeah. So,
can you make sure it's getting into the Gobi document as well, please, someone, to make sure all these comments are getting in?
one thing that I would love to have in Debian is a kind of patch review system, probably Gerrit, because that's the most advanced in terms of feature. If there is something better, easier to maintain, because Gerrit is hard to maintain in production, I wouldn't be against it, but I only know Gerrit. So Gerrit is tied to Git, so we could use dget, for example, and then have a representation of all our packages in Debian on Gerrit, so that anyone could propose a patch against the package. Once the patch is sent, then we would run all these individual tests. So like rebuilding, pew parts, adequate or whatever you want, like auto package test and whatever. And only when these are passed and approved, then
it gets a +1 in Gerrit.
Yes, it gets a +1, and then after any DD, for example, could be considered as a core developer and then approve patches if the maintainer of the package agrees with that. I'm already on the low threshold NMU list, but I would love to have that and say that any DD can approve patches. So of course it would need a lot of CPU and infrastructure. Though we have support from HP. HP has HP Cloud, which they already use this way for OpenStack. I'm sure we would get a lot of support from them. So if somebody wants to implement it, then we would have it. So that's the first thing. Hang on,
Yeah, just a comment on the first section.
We have been a few people at the cheese and wine party who are already working on a prototype of what you're suggesting. So.
Yay.
It's currently sitting in the DSA department, like we are requesting for the according resources, but we have an idea or a vision of getting the Gerrit integration with what we exactly, or what you proposed.
Does it work with Git build package?
I mean, it's completely unrelated to how you build it then.
Yeah.
The idea is that you can bring new developers also into Debian for proposing stuff, and the project owners, the ones with the according permissions on the repo, can then decide what to do about that. But the idea is, of course, that it works with Git build package and whatever.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that the best way to start experimenting with Gerrit is to convert an existing team to using it. You don't need to have a full project-wide approval to do that. Just start with a team you are involved, convince people to work on that, and let's go ahead.
Yeah, ask for the service to be set up, and then start with your team. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think I'd have the time to do it myself, but anyway, just...
But the idea is out there, hopefully it's in the notes, and then someone else can pick it up.
Another thing that I think would be really helpful is that when I build a package, it may break others, but I don't know because I don't have enough time to check for it. For example, I do Python module update, and then so many other Python module build depend on it.
Now, are you talking about direct or indirect dependencies, or are you talking about completely
Reverse
unrelated
build
software?
dependencies.
Yeah, so dependencies is where CI Debian.net comes in, because it'll trigger a test when any of the dependencies of the package changes. So you don't just get tests when you change the package. You get tests run when another package in your chain is updated.
Yes, but it should be done the other way. It's like when I want to update a package which has reverse build dependencies, it should try to rebuild these other packages before my upload is accepted.
Why
like that, I could fix the reverse build dependencies before uploading my package.
Are you talking about here about migrations to new libraries and things? Or are you
Yeah, okay, that would work well with C libraries, but it shouldn't be limited to that.
But I'm worried. I'm thinking about the idea of rebuilding it. I'm not sure why you'd rebuild all of the dependency chain.
Because okay, maybe I'm too much focused on Python. It's because I've been doing that for a long time, like over the last 2 years. But like the reverse build dependencies, most of the time you have unit tests, so it would fail to build if there's a problem.
Yeah, but that's what CI Debian.net is currently doing. It is running the unit tests. Oh, I see. It's to trigger the unit tests of the actual dependencies as well. But isn't that what happens, Antonio? Is that if a package fairly low down, say in the Python toolchain, changes, then all of the packages that depend on that will be tested.
Yeah. So if anything in the dependency chain for your package changes, then your package gets tested again.
Yeah. So the lower down that change happens, the more tests get added to the queue.
But currently it happens after the upload, right?
Okay.
What would be nice is to have it before the upload to make sure I don't break anything.
Yeah. Well, that ties in again with the request for mentors to Debian.net and other changes along
Just follow up on that. So that's why we have experimental. So as soon as we have enough CPU power, we can add experimental to CI and then run everything on experimental. So if you have a package and you're not sure if it's going to break anything, you can upload it to experimental and then let the infrastructure run the test for you.
That's not a satisfying answer because I don't know if I'm breaking things. I want to know by the test automated, and I don't want to test it myself.
Yeah, if
you know what I mean?
Well, if you're testing unpushed changes or changes that haven't been uploaded, you need to do that locally. You can't expect the whole thing to actually kick off from there. But
I know I could do everything myself, but I just don't have time.
Yeah.
And that's too much work, and it has to be automated to make sure it works, always.
Well, again, it's our bias within Debian. We drift towards testing individual packages all the time because that's where we focus our work and our input. And I want to get a feel for what we think we can do to test combinations of packages. What kind of combinations can we come up with? Are we testing an MTA chain? And we sort of test that from the ground all the way up. Not just the actual dependencies, but can we actually test that the system itself is working beyond the scope of unit tests? Unit tests are, again, inside one individual package. Well, can you test that the actual operation of the chain is working? What kinds of collections of packages can we actually come up with and think, well, yeah, that needs a test? Because that's the kind of thing that Lava can actually do. You can actually set up a system with lots of different packages installed, with your own configuration, however you want to configure it. Any way you can do that via scripting. You set it up, start it running, and then throw some data at it. Now, what kind of stuff is that going to help us to validate and test and get feedback back to developers?
So, as a reference point, HP and the H-Linux team has put together a test frame where we pull in specific packages related to supporting the HP Cloud. And then we test against that specific set of packages for all sorts of challenges, conflict between packages, missing dependencies, proper reparation in a cloud environment. So we actually do that more at a holistic level than a package level, because we know that Debian proper, does that focus on the individual package. So if you assume the individual package is going to somewhat properly operate, then you put it in a collaborative operation and see correct results. Then you make the assessment, right?
Yeah. The other thing you might need to do is to start tracking performance figures. So on the same system that shouldn't necessarily get any faster or slower, is your software actually performing faster or slower? Now again, that's the kind of stuff that Lava can do, certainly in its current state, is doing that for kernels and bootloaders and other sorts of lower level stuff like that. We're looking at escalating up from there. So one of the things I'm looking for from feedback here is what kinds of things can we do on performance testing? Not just perf and other things that are kernel related, but little groups of packages that are known to be problematic, and can we track those and see what we actually need to improve?
So one data point, I know, so Tails, the live distribution, is doing black box testing using a mixture of Ruby Cucumber and scripting Sikuli, which is a framework when you can actually, it is basically OCR for a screen, and then you can say, click that button, move that thing, or do you have this? So one thing we have in Debian is actually meta packages for tasks. And I believe we can data write it seemed to me that auto package tests was actually flexible enough, so we could put tests for the desktop as part of the task desktop GNOME meta package, for example. And so we have all the framework we need to actually reuse CI and all. If we wanted to script an actual testing with running a virtual X and trying to figure out if the desktop it's basically running.
Okay. So what about how we get these results back to the developers? How do we want to be notified when these things break? What information, what context do you need as maintainers that says this test, whether it's package related or whether it's actually just system related, what information do you need to be able to work on that bug without having to necessarily go all the way up to the top level CI/Debian.net or whatever else it actually is, parts log, or go up to the archive rebuild log, or go up to a Lava log. All these different places, there's lots of data up there. But how much data do people need to be able to start work on this without that resource and to free them and get the information directly into the hands of the developers? Is it enough just to leave it on a random website, or do we actually want notifications?
Of course, this is my personal view, but I started adding auto package tests. I have no idea what the current status is because it's not where I'm looking for. So unless I get an email about a status change, it's basically non-existent for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of overloading. I guess we all can manage email well. We have to, otherwise we wouldn't be still alive, I guess, in this project. So I would be very happy to receive lots of emails about any status changes, about any PO parts or CI or whatever things you have. Like we do for the auto rebuilds, like the archive-wide rebuilds. I get a bug report, that's useful. For that I would wish that they would also close the bug reports automatically if it gets built again, because sometimes it's not a problem in the package itself, but rather something else. And then
now, I've seen CI/Debian.net actually marking it as a temp fail when one of the dependencies doesn't install properly, and it says I couldn't actually get the system up to the point of installing your package. I'm a little bit more hesitant about automatically closing bugs just because a temporary bug went away, because the next upload is going to come back. There are packages, I maintain one where the test suite deliberately feeds in randomized data. Well, sorry, but every once in a while, you're going to find that you get a bug and then you can't reproduce it. It's a pain with that particular package, but I can see why they do it. More often than not, it doesn't cause any problems. But every once in a while, I then have to go back to a porter box and actually see what's going on that particular arch. I probably need to patch the library to fix the seed.
I just want to make a stupid comment. It seems like you should be able to say, don't generate some random data, but use the one you used for this run.
Yeah.
To try and reproduce.
I know. I'd like the time to do that, but it doesn't happen often enough.
Yeah, just a clarification about archive rebuilds. The bug filing is manual. There are tools that help writing the bug report, but still it's manual, so I don't think it makes sense to automatically close the bug later. However, there's a script that takes care of diffing the list of current failures with a list of open bugs, so it's easy to go through it and read the bug and close it if it doesn't apply anymore. I'm not sure. I'm not doing archive rebuilds anymore. I'm not sure David Suarez, who took over, has been running it recently.
Actually, on that point, when the archive rebuild manual bugs are filed, I know there's a fair amount of manual check-in to make sure that the bug actually exists, that it tested the right version, and things are going on like that. So that raises the issue of how reliable are the tools we're using, and how much do we actually need to manually check these results before we notify the maintainers. So keep this in mind as well. These tools are only as good as the code that we write. And they will let us down from time to time, and you'll get false positives or, worryingly, false negatives.
So yeah, so having just done my first ever mass bug filing, and I got a couple of complaints going, "Oi, doesn't even apply to my package, you're an idiot." And there's a new version, you didn't check that either. I suspect we have an awful lot of tools lying about that people have hacked up for all the various purposes, and we probably haven't done a very good job of collecting them to save us all writing more crap tools instead of some slightly better tools. I know Doco has some, and so on. And I've just been comparing notes with the other porters and discovering that we've all got different random scripts. So there's definitely some room for, as you say, a library of stuff for doing standard checks on mass bug filings would be a jolly helpful thing for me right now, especially if it was in Perl, but it probably isn't. Personally, it depends very much on the frequency of emails.
Yeah.
You know, if it's going to send you too many, they'll just get ignored. I get a lot of boring email from computers telling me that something's broken, and I ignore a lot of them. So I like stuff in the PTS, personally. If it's on the page in the thing, that kind of collects everything together.
Have one email and a notification in the PTS so that you're prompted to look at the PTS?
I tend to look at the PTS anyway to just check general status. What is currently broken in my package? How much whinging have I got from various Debian tools which run?
I mean, personally, I like the DDPO summary, because that has got columns for CI/Debian.net, and you can review all your packages on one screen, and you can see all the information.
So you say, like archive rebuilds, if you're going to get a mail once a year, that's fine.
Yeah.
If it's going to be every couple of weeks, that's probably not fine.
Yeah. Or if like with CI/Debian.net, if your package fails because of something wrong in your package, and then another package is uploaded for completely separate reasons, it triggers another run, then if your package hasn't been updated and fails in exactly the same way, you probably don't want another email. So that's the more difficult thing to do.
Yeah, the general question of edge-triggered notifications versus state-level triggered notifications. And do you want to receive any notification when your package comes back into a good state?
Yeah.
So that you don't have to investigate it further. And everyone will have a different opinion on what they want to receive.
Yeah, so we start.
So maybe that should be something that's configurable per maintainer.
Yeah, that increases the work from that level. Yeah.
I just want to make a quick comment. One thing that would be interesting to me personally, regardless of how we get notified about these things, is how to go about reproducing the problem without having to set up the full environment again. So I don't want to have to set up ci.debian.net. Let's say, even if it's really easy, or like whatever other tool it is. I'd like to be able to run this one test and then get the failure, and then I can fix it, and then run the thing again and show that it works, and then close the bug or whatever it is.
It's tricky when, if that's happening on a MIPS box, then that gets tricky because you actually have to have the hardware, or you have to get to a porter box and replicate it. There are tools that can do this kind of stuff. I mean, Antonio, we've looked at proot and care from ST before. There are tools that can track all of the binaries that were touched or affected or accessed by a particular test run, package them all up into one big lump, and give you the package back. And then you just deploy that over a clean chroot, and you're back to where that test was. So things like that, those tools exist, and we can think about whether we actually put those in.
I found when debugging auto-package tests that recently the test runner gained an option to drop you into a shell when a test fails.
Right.
So you can then go into the environment and play around with the actual environment
Yeah,
that failed the
that's
test.
really useful
This
as
kind
well.
of thing is very useful.
Yeah.
But it obviously doesn't work if the test is not running on your system. So
Yeah.
maybe something like this so that the system can deliver the environment to you in a bad state, and then you can poke at it then would be very nice.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, as far as bootstrapping is concerned, what can we do to actually... oh, you haven't got the mic. Oh, okay. Your comment?
Yeah, I was wondering if how much we could make that as a service. Like, you have a web form and you upload the .changes file or an archive with like the .changes file signed and a couple of deb, and it runs deb.ci or some other test for you. So that would solve the problem of Thomas, for example. That because you can send that, you could use the testing framework before uploading the package.
Yeah. I was just thinking, what can we do in terms of simulating the bootstrapping stuff? Have we got tools for identifying these dependency loops in advance?
Yeah, so we just uploaded Botch at long last after many months of it not being in the archive, like 2 days ago, which has 40 scripts of various sorts of, is this buildable, are its dependencies installable, what's cross-buildable today, and all that sort of stuff. Oh, I'm supposed to stand up, not people behind me. Hello. So there are useful tools in there, right. And as I say, I think who's got mass bug filing scripts or libraries and things here? Stick your hands up. Anybody? Nobody's actually written any code for this? I feel there should be lots of it lying about, because people have been doing this stuff for ages, and that would be helpful. So there are some tools now in the archive. I don't know if it's exactly what you need, and we've still got some pieces missing, but yeah.
Okay. Antonio had a question. Good.
How do we make sure that auto package tests are kept up to date? Currently, I see a lot of packages, well, at least when imported to Ubuntu, which fail their auto package tests, and not just once, but well, several times, and I don't see some tests ever succeed, and that's right. A lot of pain if such a test is triggered by, well, some common package, for example, by setup tools. All Python packages are triggered and trigger all the non-working tests. Uploading GCC triggers everything. So that's something which we should avoid, because then none of the core packages will ever migrate.
This is what we have for build failures already. Only block if you have had a failure before, if you change from good to bad, I guess. I mean, in Ubuntu we had a problem where we let lots of packages in which were bad, and now they are still bad, and we're blocking for that reason, because the infrastructure wasn't solid from the start. But I guess in Debian we should take care to try and, before we turn on the naughty switch, make sure that everything's working correctly.
1 minute left. Sorry. Antonio, do you want? No. So hopefully we've got most of this into the Gobby document. I'll be using that as the basis for anything we actually work on from here. If you've got particular questions about how new tools and how we could actually work, particularly with Lava on this kind of thing, or if you just want to know more about Lava, that's the evening talk today, 7 o'clock. I've forgotten which room it's in, but it's on the schedule. Okay, thank you very much.